The silver ships cut through Earth's blood-red sky like knives through silk. Commander Heijin stood on the bridge of the lead vessel, his hands pressed against the viewing window as the planet below revealed its secrets. What he saw made his stomach turn. Earth was dying. The once blue world now wore scars like battle wounds across its surface. Where green forests had once grown, only gray dust remained. Where cities had once sparkled with life, strange crystal towers now jutted from the ground like broken teeth. "The readings are coming in," Lieutenant Soman said from her station. Her voice was quiet, but Heijin could hear the shock in it. "Commander, 18 billion humans lived on this world before the Kethver came. Our scanners show only 12 million. 12 million. The number hit Heijin like a physical blow. In 200 years, the Kethver had reduced humanity to almost nothing. He had seen war before, had witnessed the aftermath of battles that claimed millions of lives. But this was different. This was slow. Deliberate murder spread across centuries. The Kethver cities below looked like tumors growing from Earth's flesh. Crystal structures fed on the planet's life force, drawing power from the very ground. Around each city, Heijin could see the dark rectangles of labor camps where humans were kept like livestock. "Begin the attack," he ordered, his voice hard as stone. The battle lasted 3 days, but it felt like 3 years to Heijin. The Confederation fleet had better weapons, better shields, better everything. The Kethver garrison was strong, but they had grown lazy after 2 centuries of easy rule. They had never expected anyone to challenge them here. Plasma beams lit up the sky as the 2 fleets clashed above Earth's surface. The Kethver energy shields glowed and sparked under the assault, holding for hours before finally breaking apart like glass. One by one, their ships fell from the sky or fled into the darkness of space. When the last Kethver vessel jumped to hyperspace, Heijin let out a breath he didn't know he had been holding. Earth was free. Now came the hard part. The first rescue shuttles landed near the largest labor camp. Heijin went down with the first wave, expecting to find broken people who would weep with joy at their freedom. What he found instead made his skin crawl. The humans who greeted them were polite. Too polite. They stood in perfect lines, their faces blank and empty. When Heijin spoke to them, they answered with mechanical precision, like machines programmed to respond. "We thank you for our freedom," said a young man who looked barely 20. His name was Jiho, and scars covered his arms from years of forced labor. But his eyes were what bothered Heijin most. They were cold and patient, like a predator watching prey. "You are safe now," Heijin told him, trying to smile. "The Kethver will never hurt you again." "We understand," Jiho replied. "We have learned much about survival in these past 2 centuries. The way he said it sent chills down Heijin's spine. There was something in those words, something that spoke of plans and patience and a hunger that had nothing to do with food. As the rescue operation continued, noticed other things that troubled him. The humans moved through the camps like ghosts, always watching, always listening. When his soldiers explained how their weapons worked, the humans asked intelligent questions. When they showed them the rescue ships, human eyes tracked every detail. "They are just curious," Soman said, when Heijin mentioned his concerns. After 200 years of slavery, they want to understand the technology that freed them. Maybe she was right. Maybe Heijin was seeing threats where none existed. But he had been a soldier for 30 years, and his instincts told him something was wrong. The humans were too calm, too organized. Even after centuries of oppression, they showed no sign of the chaos that usually followed liberation. There were no tears of joy, no wild celebrations, no desperate questions about lost family members, just that cold, mechanical politeness over the following weeks. As the Confederation set up refugee camps and began the process of helping humanity rebuild, Heijin watched the survivors carefully. They were model refugees, always grateful, always helpful. They learned quickly, adapted fast, and never complained about the harsh conditions. But late at night, when he thought no one was watching, Heijin saw them talking in small groups. Their conversation stopped whenever a Confederation soldier approached. Their eyes followed every patrol, noted every guard rotation, memorized every weapon and vehicle. "What are you planning?" Shin whispered to himself as he watched Jiho from across the camp. The young man was teaching a group of children how to read, his voice patient and kind. But those cold eyes never stopped moving, never stopped calculating. The liberation was complete. Earth was free. But as Hudjin looked at the faces of the humans they had saved, he began to wonder if they had just traded one problem for another. The Kethfer had broken their bodies. But something told him that humanity's spirit had never truly been broken. It had just been waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Dr. Minho stood on the stage of the Galactic Science Academy, the lights shining down on his carefully pressed uniform. Around him, beings from dozens of worlds clapped their hands, tentacles, and whatever else they used to show approval. He had just received the highest honor in Confederate science for his work on quantum computers. "Thank you," he said into the microphone, his voice carrying across the massive hall. "The gratitude of humanity knows no bounds. Everything we have achieved is because of the kindness you showed us 50 years ago." The crowd loved it. They always did when humans talked about gratitude. It made them feel good about themselves. Made them think they had done something noble by freeing the slaves of Earth. What they did not know was that Minho's quantum computers had a secret. Hidden deep in their code were tiny doorways that only humans could open. Every time someone used his technology, humans could peek inside and see what they were doing. The Confederation thought they were getting better computers. They were really getting spies in every system. After the ceremony, Minho walked through the academy halls, nodding and smiling at the alien professors who congratulated him. His mind was not on their praise. Instead, he was thinking about the message he had received that morning from Captain Yoon-SEO. Yoon-SEO was flying cargo ships between the outer worlds, carrying food and supplies to distant colonies. To everyone who knew her, she was just another human success story. She had been a slave, and now she was free, working hard to build a new life. But Minho knew better. Every time Uniceo's ship docked at a space station or landed on a colony world, she was doing more than just delivering supplies. She was counting ships, noting weapon positions, and mapping defense systems. Her cargo runs took her to every corner of Confederate space, and she saw everything. The report she had sent that morning was typical. The military base on Kepler 7 had 43 ships, mostly old cruisers with outdated shields. The trade station at Wolf 359 processed 16 million tons of cargo each month, most of it food and raw materials. The colony on Proximo 3 had only 12 security guards and no orbital defenses. Information like this flowed to Minho every day from hundreds of humans scattered across the galaxy. They were janitors who cleaned government buildings and overheard important conversations. They were technicians who fixed communication arrays and quietly copied the data that passed through them. They were clerks who filed reports and made copies of everything. The Confederation saw them as grateful refugees who had found their place in galactic society. They did not see the network of eyes and ears that humanity had built across their territory. Minho's assistant, a young woman named Hajin, knocked on his office door. She had been working late again, supposedly updating the quantum computer systems on various worlds. In reality, she was installing more backdoors and gathering more information. "The updates are complete," she reported, handing him a datapad. 17 more systems are now connected to our network." Minho nodded. 17 more planets where humans could now watch everything that happened. The number of worlds under their quiet observation had grown from dozens to hundreds to thousands over the past 50 years. On the rim worlds, Captain Unesio was loading her ship with medical supplies bound for a research station. The station. Workers saw her as just another cargo hauler, polite and efficient. They did not notice how she counted the scientists, noted their research projects, and memorized the station's layout. "Where are you headed next?" asked the station commander. "A friendly alien with blue skin and 4 arms. "The mining colony on Vega 2, Unesio replied with a smile. "They need equipment for their new excavation project." What she did not mention was that the mining colony had discovered a new type of rare metal that could make ship armor much stronger. The Confederation did not know about this discovery yet, but humanity did. Because the colony's communication officer was a human named Taman, who sent regular reports to his hidden contacts. Back on Earth, which had been rebuilt into a beautiful world again, human children learned about the great liberation in their schools. They were taught to be grateful to the Confederation, to work hard, to always help their alien friends. But they were also taught other things in private lessons that no alien ever saw. They learned how to watch without being noticed, how to listen without being heard, and how to remember everything they saw and heard. The Confederation had given humanity a gift 50 years ago. They had broken the chains that held them prisoner and offered them a place in galactic society. Humanity had accepted that gift with endless gratitude and used it to build something their liberators could never have imagined. Every human refugee who found work in Confederate space was a seed planted in fertile soil. Every act of kindness from their alien hosts was noted and remembered. Every door that opened to them was an opportunity to see more, learn more, prepare for whatever might come next. The recovery was complete. Humanity had rebuilt itself from the ashes of slavery. What they had built was not what their liberators had expected. They'd built a web that stretched across the galaxy, invisible and patient, waiting for the right moment to reveal its true purpose. The attack came in the middle of the night. One moment, the border worlds were peaceful and quiet. The next, they were burning under the guns of the Zephyrian horde. The raiders struck like wolves, their black ships appearing out of empty space without warning. They hit hard and fast, stealing everything valuable before disappearing again into the dark. The Confederation had never seen anything like it. Admiral Tehayan was in his quarters on the flagship when the emergency alert came through. He had been reading reports from human communities across the galaxy, the same reports he read every night. Now those reports would have to wait. "Sir," his aide called through the door, "the Confederation Council is calling for volunteers too. Fight the Horde. They want every available ship." Tehayan smiled as he put on his uniform. This was the moment humanity had been waiting for. Not the attack itself, but the opportunity it represented. "Send word to all human commanders," he ordered. "We volunteer everything, every ship, every soldier, every resource we have." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Human captains from across the galaxy answered the call, bringing their ships to join the defense fleet. The Confederation was amazed by their enthusiasm. Here were former slaves, eager to risk their lives for the worlds that had freed them. What the Confederation did not know was that these human ships were not the same vessels they had started with. 8. Quietly modified every ship they could get their hands on. The changes were small and hidden, but they made the ships faster, stronger, and deadlier than anything the Confederation had ever seen. The first battle against the Zephyrian horde took place near the mining world of Altair 4. The raiders came, expecting easy prey. But instead, they found Tehayan's fleet waiting for them. The human ships moved like dancers, their formations perfect and precise. They knew exactly where the enemy would be before the enemy knew it themselves. The Zephyrians had never faced tactics like these before. "How are they doing this?" demanded the Zephyrian war chief, as his ships were cut apart by human weapons. "They fight like they can read our minds." In a way they could. Human strategists had been studying warfare for 70 years, learning from every battle, every defeat, every victory. They had taken the knowledge of dozens of alien races and combined it into something new and terrible. The battle was over in 6 hours. The Zephyrian fleet was destroyed, their survivors fleeing into deep space. The Confederation celebrated their first real victory against the Horde, praising the brave humans who had made it possible. But Intelligence Officer Kyun Ho was not celebrating. He was studying the battle reports, and what he found made his blood run cold. The human ships had fought with perfect coordination, as if they shared a single mind. Their weapons had been upgraded with technology that should not have existed. Their tactical information had been impossibly accurate. "Is not possible," Kung Ho muttered as he reviewed the data. "No one coordinates this well without years of training together." He began to dig deeper, looking at records from across the galaxy. What he found was a pattern that stretched back decades. Human refugees had not spread randomly across Confederation space. They had positioned themselves with surgical precision. Every major communication hub had human technicians. Every power station had human engineers. Every military base had human support staff. They had volunteered for the most important jobs, the ones that gave them access to everything, The pattern was so perfect, it could not be an accident. This was planning on a scale that boggled the mind. Sir Kung Ho said to his commander, a three-eyed alien named Vex-9, "I need to show you something." He spread out a map of Confederation space, marking every location with a significant human presence. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. Humans had positioned themselves like pieces on a game board, each one in exactly the right place to control something vital. "They are not refugees," Kyun Ho said quietly. "They are an invasion force." His commander stared at the map, his three eyes blinking in disbelief. "That is impossible. They were slaves. We freed them." "Did we?" Kung Ho asked. "Or did we just give them better tools?" The evidence was overwhelming once you looked for it. Human-designed technology was everywhere in Confederation space. Human advisors sat in government meetings across dozens of worlds. Human workers maintained the systems that kept civilization running, and now, human ships had just demonstrated military capabilities that should have taken centuries to develop. "We need to investigate this immediately," Vex-9 said. "If you are, right, then we are all in terrible danger." But Kyung Ho feared it was already too late. If humanity had been planning this for 70 years, then they had thought of everything. Every contingency, every possibility, every way the Confederation might try to stop them, the Zephyrian horde had been defeated. But Kung Ho was beginning to realize that they had never been the real threat. The real threat had been living among them all along, wearing friendly faces and speaking words of gratitude. The chains had been broken 70 years ago. But perhaps humanity had simply been waiting for the right moment to forge new ones. Tuesday, morning started like any other day. Across the Confederation, on 1,000 worlds, billions of beings woke up, ate breakfast, and went to work. By Thursday evening, their civilization was crashing down around them. The order had come from the highest levels of government: relocate all human populations immediately. It was supposed to be quiet, careful, and gradual. Intelligence officer Kung Ho had convinced his superiors that humanity posed a threat, and they had decided to act. Admiral Sung Wo was in charge of the operation. He had worked with humans for decades and considered many of them friends. But orders were orders, and the evidence was too strong to ignore. "We will do this gently," he told his staff on Tuesday morning. "These people have been through enough. We relocate them to safe worlds where they can live in peace." The first sign of trouble came within hours. On Centauri 7, the power grid failed just as human technicians were being removed from their posts. The backup systems tried to activate, but they had been modified over the years by human engineers. Nobody else knew how to make them work. "It is probably just a coincidence," Sung Woo told himself. But then the reports started flooding in. The communication network on Vega Prime went dark. The navigation computers on the trade route to Sirius began giving false readings.
The water purification
Systems on New Eden stopped working. The defense satellites around Proxima 3 shut down completely. Every failure happened at exactly the same time humans were being relocated from their jobs. By Wednesday, 17 worlds had lost power completely. The inhabitants sat in darkness. Wondering what had gone wrong, food shipments stopped arriving because the cargo ships could not navigate without their human-modified guidance systems. Medical supplies ran low because the manufacturing plants could not operate without their human technicians. "We created our own nightmare," Admiral Sung Woo admitted as he stared at the disaster reports covering his desk. His 3-day operation had become a galaxy-wide catastrophe. On Luna, General Heo Jin sat in her command center, watching the chaos unfold on 1,000 screens. She had been waiting for this moment for 70 years. Every human refugee who had taken a job in Confederation space had been part of her plan. Every modification to alien technology had been designed for this day. "A status report," she said. To her aide, a young man named Dong Su. 17 worlds without power, 34 without communications, and 67 with failing life support systems, he reported. "The Confederation is paralyzed." Hyojin nodded. It was proceeding exactly as planned. For 7 decades, humanity had made itself indispensable to their rescuers. They had become the mechanics who fixed the machines, the programmers who wrote the code. and the engineers who designed the systems that kept civilization running, the aliens had thought they were getting grateful workers. They had actually been getting a web of control that stretched across the galaxy. They still do not understand, Hyojin said quietly. They think this is about revenge. They think we are angry about our time as slaves. But it was not about revenge. It was about survival. Humanity had learned a terrible lesson during their centuries of slavery, in a galaxy full of stronger, more advanced species. The only way to be safe was to be necessary. Communications specialist Wu Ben looked up from his console. General, we are receiving surrender offers from 14 worlds. They are asking us to send technicians to fix their systems. Not yet, Hyojin said. Let them understand the full scope of their situation first. On the planet Kepler-44b, the mining operation that fed the Confederation's industrial base had ground to a halt. The human supervisor, Yun Young, had been relocated 3 days ago. Without her, the alien workers could not operate the complex machinery that extracted rare metals from the planet's core. We need her back, the mine foreman, a 6-armed creature named Zlix, told his government. The extraction process was designed by humans. We cannot understand it. The same scene was playing out across the galaxy. Human-designed systems were failing everywhere. Human-trained workers were the only ones who could fix them. The Confederation had spent 70 years allowing humanity to become the foundation of their society. Now that foundation was crumbling, and they were helpless to stop it. Broadcast on all frequencies, Hyojin ordered. It was time to explain the new reality to their former liberators. Wuben's fingers moved across his controls, sending the message to every world in Confederation space. The signal was strong enough to reach even the planets that had lost their communication networks. People of the Confederation, Hyojin began, her voice calm and steady. You freed us from slavery 70 years ago, and we have never forgotten that kindness. But we have also never forgotten the lesson we learned as slaves, that the strong will always dominate the weak unless the weak become necessary. She paused, letting her words sink in across 1,000 worlds. You have just discovered how necessary we have become. We are not your enemies. We are your partners. Partnerships require equality, and equality requires that both sides have something the other needs. The message was clear. Humanity had spent 70 years making itself indispensable to the Confederation. Now they were using that position to demand respect, equality, and security. The trap had been sprung. The chains were broken. And the galaxy would never be the same. 5 years had passed since the collapse, and the galaxy had learned to live with its new masters. Director Jamin stood before a gathering of alien leaders in the Grand Hall on Earth, his hands folded behind his back as he addressed them. We are not conquerors, he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. We are managers. The galaxy needs order, and we provide it. Alien dignitaries listened in silence. Some of them had been powerful rulers before the collapse. Now they were guests in their own territories, asking permission from humans to make decisions about their own worlds. The Zephyrian ambassador, a warrior whose people had once terrorized the galaxy, sat quietly in the front row. His species had been among the first to accept human rule after their navigation systems failed and their ships became trapped in space. Now they worked as security guards for human administrators. The transition has been peaceful, Jamin continued. Of you chose cooperation over chaos. Those who did not make that choice have learned to reconsider. He was referring to the Rigel Republic, which had tried to resist human control. Their planets had been cut off from the Galactic Communication Network, their trade ships denied access to navigation data. Within 6 months, their economy had collapsed, and their people were begging for readmission to the galactic community. On Kepler-44b, Supervisor Yunyang watched the morning shift report for work at the mining complex. The workers came from dozens of different species, including some Kethver, who had once been humanity's slavers. Now they dug ore from the planet's core under human supervision. Production is up 30% from last month, her deputy Klex reported. The nervous Altarian had been promoted to his position after proving his loyalty to the new order. The new extraction methods are working perfectly. Yunyang nodded. Human efficiency had transformed the mining operation, where the previous alien administrators had managed to extract limited amounts of rare metals. Human techniques pulled 3 times as much from the same sites. The workers labored under strict schedules, but they were fed well and housed properly. "We learned from our time in chains," Yoon Young told Klex as they walked through the facility. "We know the difference between necessary order and pointless cruelty." The workers they passed kept their eyes down, showing the proper respect. They were not slaves, but they were certainly not free. They worked when told to work, rested when told to rest, and lived where they were assigned to live. It was a comfortable prison, but it was still a prison in the communication center on Luna. Engineer Sung-ho monitored the quantum arrays that carried messages across the galaxy. Every transmission passed through human-controlled relays. Every conversation was recorded and analyzed. The galaxy had become transparent to human observers. "Any problems today?" asked his supervisor, a stern woman named Insu. 3 minor rebellions on Outer Rim worlds, Sung-ho reported. "All communication to those systems has been cut. They should surrender within the week." It was always the same pattern. Some world would decide to resist human authority, usually encouraged by old leaders who missed their former power. The humans would simply disconnect them from the galactic network. Without communication, navigation, or trade, the rebellion would collapse on its own. The beauty of the system was that humans rarely had to use direct force. They had made themselves so necessary to galactic civilization that simply withdrawing their services was enough to bring any world to its knees. On the farming world of Series 9, Agricultural Director Wu Jin supervised the harvest of grain that would feed 17 different planets. The alien farmers worked the fields under human guidance, their ancient techniques improved by human science. The old ways were wasteful, Wu Jin explained to a visiting journalist from the Andromedan News Network. "We have increased crop yields by 200% while using half the water and fertilizer." The journalist, a creature with green skin and 4 eyes, took notes carefully. The story would be broadcast across the galaxy, showing how human management had improved life for everyone. What the journalist did not mention was that the farmers had no choice in what they grew or where they sold it. Those decisions were made by human administrators who controlled the entire food supply chain back on Earth. Director Jae-min finished his speech to the alien dignitaries. "The old Confederation was built on cooperation between equals," he said. "But equality is a luxury that requires stability. We provide that stability." The dignitaries applauded politely. They had learned to show enthusiasm for human policies, even when those policies reduced their own power. The alternative was isolation and economic collapse. After the meeting, Jae-min walked to his office overlooking the rebuilt city of New Geneva. The view was beautiful, with parks and gardens where labor camps had once stood. Humanity had indeed learned from its time in chains. They had built a system that was more efficient than slavery, more stable than democracy, and more permanent than conquest. The galaxy was orderly now. Ships ran on schedule, goods moved efficiently between worlds, and conflicts were resolved quickly. The price of this order was freedom, but most beings had decided that freedom was too expensive to maintain. The Confederation had broken Earth's chains 70 years ago. Now humanity had forged new chains for the entire galaxy. The difference was that these chains were invisible, made of necessity rather than metal, and that made them impossible to break. The new order was complete. The galaxy belonged to humanity now, and humanity intended to keep it that way forever.